Hi all, welcome to educators.com. I'm Harish, software engineer. In this session, we will learn about what is variable and its declaration, and what are the naming conventions we need to follow, and how to initialize a variable, and what is the scope of variable, and dynamic types, and hoisting a variables, constant variables, and finally the advantages of variables. So by end of the session, you should be able to understand what is a variable and how to declare the variables, and what are the naming conventions we need to follow, and what is the scope of that variables, and the different things. So let's start with variable and its declaration. A variable is actually the placeholder for a given value. So let's say we store a value in memory. So how to refer that value which is stored in memory? So we can refer that value which has been stored in memory using the variable. So variable is just a placeholder for this value. In JavaScript, variables are declared using the keyword var. As in this example, you can check I declared the variable prime number with the value as 1, 2, 3 and first name variable with the value as educators. We can declare these variables on a single line or multiple lines. As in this example, you can check I declared the variables first name, last name, full name and age in a single line, where age is of type integer and the first name, last name, full name is of type string. You can declare the variables of all types into a single line or split them into multiple lines. As in the second example, you can check I declared the first name, last name, full name in single line and then age variable in the second line. As JavaScript is a dynamically typed language, therefore it is not required to specify the type of a variable during declaration. As unlike other programming languages, where we'll be specifying the type of the variable, here in the JavaScript, we no need to declare the type of the variable during the declaration. The type of the variable is decided based on the value assigned. As in this example, you can check that I declared the variable my value with the value as 1, 2, 3. When I declare this variable with the value as 1, 2, 3, the type of the variable is been set as number. In the second example, when I declare the variable my value with the value string, the type of the variable becomes string. Naming conventions. In JavaScript, variables are case sensitive. As in this example, I declared two variables with the same name, sample, but the difference is in the first letter. In the first variable, I declared the first letter in a small case, whereas in the second variable, I declared the variable first letter in the capital. Here, even the names are same, but the JavaScript will treat them as different, as it is case sensitive. Here in JavaScript, variable names can start with $, letter or underscore, but it cannot start with numbers. So apart from the first character, a variable can be made up of any combination of letter, underscore, number or characters. In the first character, we can use $, letter or underscore. So apart from the first character, we can use numbers also in the variable. So in the special characters, apart from underscore and $, the other characters are not allowed. Example, exclamatory, @ hash, etc. And most important thing, we cannot use reserved keywords as variable names. Example, string, number, boolean, yield, etc. So let's take some of the valid and invalid variable names. Here, in the valid variable names, at first I declared a variable called sample. It is declared in letters, whereas in the second variable I used underscore. So this is also a valid variable name. And the third, I declared also dollar. In the fourth, I used numbers. In the fifth one, I used dollar as a prefix for the variable and later underscore as a prefix for the variable. So these all combinations are the valid variable names. So coming to invalid variable names, here in the first variable, I use the @ which is a special character that is not allowed in the variable naming conventions. So this comes under the invalid variable names. And the second example, I started the variable name with a number, which is not allowed in JavaScript. And the third one, I declared the variable name in completely numbers, which is also invalid in JavaScript. So these are all the valid and invalid variable names in JavaScript. So how to initialize a variable? We can initialize a variable in JavaScript in two ways. First thing, declaring the variable first and then initializing it. In the second, declaring and initializing with single statement. Here, in the first line example, I declared the variable first called sample and then assigned the value hello to the variable sample. So I made the declaration and initialization in two steps. Whereas in the second example, I declared and initialized the value to the variable in a single line. So this is about initializing a variable in JavaScript. So coming to scope of variables. The scope of the variables is divided into two types. First is the local variables and the second is the global variables. The global variables are the one which are declared within the script that are available to all the functions within the page. Global variables will be available as properties of window object. The life starts with its declaration and is deleted when the page is closed. So the global variables, when you declare within the page, they're available to every function of the page. It is not related to a local scope. It is always related to is a global scope and will be available as a property of the window object. It's not only about the variables. Whatever you declare in the global, whether it's function or an object or a variable, any kind of thing, it will be treated as a property of the window object. So let's look into local variables. Local variables are the one which are declared within the function or within the scope of the page. The variable is created when the function starts executing and is deleted when the function execution is complete. Unlike global variables, the variables which it will be created when the function starts executing and is deleted when the function execution is complete. This means the variables are created when the function is being called. That means, and the variable will be deleted after the function has returned the value. We can also have variables with same name in local and global scope. Let's say I can have a name like sample in the global scope as well as in the local scope. If you use the variable in local scope, the local variable will take the precedence over the global scope. And if you use the variable outside the local scope, the global variable will take the precedence. That means, let's say we have a variable, global variable sample equal to 10. In the local, we have a same variable name sample equal to 20. When you use the local scope, the local variable take the precedence. So the value will be of the sample will be 20. Sorry. Whereas if you want to use a variable at a global level, the value will be 10. So let's say if you want to use the global and local variables, you can do it by using the window object which will hold the value of global variable. This means, let's say if you have two variables with the same name in global and local scope, then you can refer to both variables. In the local scope directly you can refer the variable name, and you can refer the global property using the window object. As in this example, you can check I declared a function called add which accepts a number 1. Here in this function I am multiplying the number with 10 and adding it to the global property called number 1. Here, since the both names are same, the local variable will take the precedence over the global variable. But When I do want to use the global variable, I can refer the global variable using the window object. So this is all about the local and global scope of variables. So let's look into undefined. JavaScript assigns the default value to a variable as undefined. Irrespective of the data type of the variable, when the variable is declared without any value, the JavaScript will default assign the value as undefined, which is also a data type. But the result of evaluating undefined variables depends on its declaration. The evaluated expression result will be undefined or not a number. Based on the usage of this variable in the expression, the result can be undefined or not a number. We'll be exploring more on this undefined when we discuss about the data types in JavaScript. So coming to dynamic types. JavaScript supports the dynamic types. This means a variable can be reused to define a other variable. Let's say we declared a variable called generic1 with the value as 10. After some lines of code, I want to reuse this variable with the value as JavaScript, which is of data type string. So we can reuse the existing variables with a different data type, which is not allowed in other programming languages. But main thing, we should not follow this style of coding. Coming to hoisting. Here in JavaScript, there is one flexibility that we can declare the variables at any line of code. During runtime, the declared variables will be moved to the top of their scope, but not the assignment. Let's look and take this example. I have declared the function called display, where in the first line it displays the message welcome in the log, and then I declared the variable called first word with the value as hello, and then I printed the value first word, and the next line I printed the second word, but before the declaration of the second word. Due to this hoisting, the second word declaration will be moved to the top, but not the initialization. So when I check the log of the second word, it will be printed as undefined. So that's the main thing of the hoisting. It will move top the only declaration, not the initialization. So when you like to handle this kind of code, you should be very careful. So coming to constant variables. As similar to other programming languages, we can also define the constant variable in JavaScript using the keyword const. As in this example, we can check I declared the variable called test with the value as test sample. When I want to override the variable with the value as override, it throws type error saying assignment to a constant variable. That even and the most important thing, the declaration and assignment of constant value should be on same line of statement, or else it will throw a syntax error saying missing initialization in constant declaration. In this example, let's say I declared only the variable, but in the second line I initialize that variable, constant variable, with the values hello. But in the first line itself, it will throw error saying missing initializer in constant declaration. Advantages of using variables. It resolves the duplicate issues. Let's say you have a value which will be used at multiple places in your code. So when you want to update that value, you need to update at each and every place in the code. So instead of doing that, you can declare that value to a variable and then use that variable at multiple places, so that when you want to update, you can change at one place instead of doing that change at multiple places. So this is one of the advantage of using variables. And second thing, more code readability. If you use a value, the developers will not be able to understand, will be working later on these web applications, like what the value refers to and what's its intention. If you use the proper variable name to the value, then at least the developer will be able to understand what the most meaning of the variable and why we are using that. And we can also create a variable using other variables. Let's say I have a variable called var first name equal to JavaScript and the last name as tutorial. I want to build a variable called full name. I can build a full name by concatenating these two variables, which will generate the value for the third variable called full name. We can also reuse the variables. As I mentioned in the before that JavaScript supports dynamic types. Here we can reuse the existing variables. So let's look into some of the lab. First, we'll start with initializing variables. Here, in the first line, I declared the variable and then initialize the variable. This is one line of style, one way of style. And the second way is declaring and initializing in the same line. So let's print this value using alert first style sample and then alert second style sample 2. So let's check this output in the browser. Here it prints the values 1, 2, 3, and in the second style it prints the values 1, 2, 3, 4. So both the declarations are same, but the difference is the number of lines of code. Here we are declaring it in single line. Here we are declaring in two lines. So this is all about initializing the variable. So now let's check out the global local variables. Here I declared a global variable with a value as 10, but inside the function called add, I use the local variable called initial value, which is of same name as global variable. But I want to add these values. I can do it using the window object. Here I am calling this function with the initial value as 3. So my output should be 13. So instead of returning the value, let's print the value using alert. Here you can check the alert is returning the sum of two variables of local and global variable. So we can refer to the global variables using the window prop object. So now let's look into the undefined. Here let's stop the live preview. Here I declared the variable first without any value. Let's see what the value has been printed. Okay, here it prints as undefined. It says the value of sample is undefined. So by this you can make sure that the JavaScript assigns the value as undefined to the non-initialized variables. So this is all about undefined. So let's go to dynamic types. Here I declared a variable called with the value as 1, 2, 3, and then I overridden that variable with the value as JavaScript, which is of data type string. That means I'm overriding also the data type of that variable. So let's see what the browser prints. Here it prints as 1, 2, 3, which is an integer value. So after the assigning the JavaScript value, now it prints as JavaScript without throwing any error. So you can check how we can reuse the variables. So now coming to hoisting. Well, so let's stop this live preview. It is loading each and every time. So in hoisting, I declared a function called display, which will first alert a message called welcome. Then it will show a alert, which is of value first word, and then a second alert, which is of word, which is the value of second word, but before the declaration of the second word. So with the hoisting, we came to know that the declaration will be moved to the top, but not the initialization. So in the first alert, which will print the value as first word, it should print as hello, but whereas the second word, it should print as undefined. So let's check it out. Here you can check the first word is been printed as welcome, and the first is printed as hello, but now the first word is being printed as hello, and then the second word is being printed as undefined. So with this, you can check that how the hoisting will work in JavaScript. So coming to constant variables. Here, the constant variables or cannot be overridden. Like it can be initialized only once. It cannot be overridden again. So here, I declared a constant variable called test with a value as sample. When I want to override the value, it should throw an error. So let's see. In the console, you can check that it throws an uncaught type error saying assignment to constant variable. So this shows that we can't assign the value to constant variable again. So this is all about the lab on the variables. So that's all from this session. Thank you.